Van Gogh Amsterdam. For many, the name conjures images of winding canals, historic gabled houses, and a vibrant, freewheeling culture. But for the art world, it is something more. It is a pilgrimage site. It is the undisputed global epicenter for the legacy of one of history's most iconic and emotionally resonant artists, Vincent van Gogh. This isn't by accident. It's the result of a concentrated, almost overwhelming, collection of his life's work. A cultural weight so immense that it has forced the city, and specifically one institution, to develop a radical, forward-thinking agenda. This isn't just about hanging pictures on a wall. This is about managing a global phenomenon. At the heart of it all stands the Van Gogh Museum, a sleek, modern structure on the city's famed museum plain. It doesn't just contain Van Gogh's work, it holds the largest collection of his art in the world. We're talking about more than 200 paintings, 500 drawings, and over 700 of his personal letters. This is the motherlode. It's the raw, unfiltered source code of his genius, his despair, his intellect, and his soul. To stand in this building is to stand inside Vincent's mind. You can trace his entire tragically short career, from the dark, earthy tones of his early Dutch period with works like The Potato Eaters, to the explosive, sun-drenched ecstasy of his final years in the south of France with masterpieces like Sunflowers, The Bedroom, and Almond Blossom. This sheer concentration of work creates a unique and profound responsibility. The museum isn't just a gallery, it's the primary custodian of a universal cultural heritage. And this responsibility necessitates a modern agenda that extends far beyond simple preservation. It demands constant research, innovative presentation, and a global-facing strategy. Why? Because when you hold the core of an artist's legacy, you can't afford to be static. The world's eyes are on you, and the questions never stop. How did his technique evolve? What do his letters truly reveal about his mental state? How can we protect the vibrant yet fragile pigments he used from the ravages of time? Answering these questions from a single, isolated institutional perspective is no longer viable. The weight of the collection itself, the sheer gravity of its cultural importance, creates an imperative to connect, to share, to collaborate. The story of how this collection came to be is, in itself, a testament to a forward-thinking vision. It wasn't amassed by a wealthy patron or a state-run committee. It was preserved through the fierce dedication of his family, most notably Johanna van Gogh Bonger, the widow of Vincent's brother Theo. After both brothers died, she was left with an apartment full of hundreds of paintings and drawings by an artist who had sold virtually nothing. The world saw them as the worthless daubings of a madman, but Johanna saw their true value. She meticulously organized the letters, curated the artworks, and strategically began loaning them to exhibitions, slowly and painstakingly building Vincent's posthumous reputation. It was her agenda, her vision, that laid the groundwork for everything. The museum, which opened in 1973, is the ultimate fulfillment of her mission, to ensure Vincent's work was shared with the world. Today, that mission has evolved into a complex, multifaceted operation. Managing this Amsterdam-centric legacy means tackling immense modern challenges. First, there's the issue of conservation. Van Gogh's famously thick impasto, the way he slathered paint directly onto the canvas, creates unique structural problems. His use of experimental and often unstable pigments, particularly his beloved chrome yellows, means that some of his most vibrant paintings are, quite literally, fading. The brilliant yellows in Sunflowers are slowly turning a brownish ochre. To combat this requires cutting-edge science, teams of chemists, physicists, and art historians working together. It demands resources and expertise that often lie outside the walls of a single museum. Then there's the challenge of presentation and relevance. How do you tell the story of a 19th century artist to a 21st century audience saturated with digital media? How do you move beyond the one-dimensional myth of the tortured artist and reveal the deeply intelligent, well-read, and multilingual man who wrote with as much passion as he painted? This requires constant reevaluation, fresh curatorial perspectives, and a willingness to embrace new technologies to tell his story in more immersive and engaging ways. It means creating an experience that resonates with a visitor from Japan just as much as a visitor from down the street. This is where the context of Amsterdam becomes so crucial. The Van Gogh Museum doesn't exist in a vacuum. It sits on a square flanked by the Rijksmuseum, home to Rembrandt and Vermeer, and the Stedelijk Museum, a powerhouse of modern and contemporary art. This proximity isn't just geographical, it's philosophical. It fosters an environment of exchange and dialogue. It allows for a richer understanding of Van Gogh, not as an isolated figure, but as an artist in conversation with the Dutch masters who came before him and the modernists who came after. This inherent interconnectedness in the very fabric of the city's cultural landscape is a microcosm of the larger theme. The immense, concentrated collection in Amsterdam acts as a central hub, a sun, around which other institutions, researchers, and technologies must orbit. It is the starting point for a global conversation, and the sheer scale of its holdings makes collaboration not just a nice idea, but an absolute, undeniable necessity for securing the future of his legacy. Block 2. Museum Synergy. The idea that a single museum, even one as prestigious as the Van Gogh Museum, could single-handedly manage and interpret such a monumental legacy is a relic of the past. The modern agenda, born from the immense responsibility centered in Amsterdam, is one of synergy. It's a dynamic, intricate dance of collaboration between institutions, a recognition that the story of Vincent van Gogh is too big, too complex, and too globally significant to be told from a single stage. This synergy isn't just about loaning paintings back and forth. It's a deep philosophical shift towards a networked model of cultural stewardship, where shared knowledge and resources amplify the impact of the art for everyone. Let's look at the practicalities. One of the most powerful forms of this synergy is the joint exhibition. Consider the landmark 2015 exhibition, Munch van Gogh. Co-organized by the Munch Museum in Oslo and the Van Gogh Museum, this was a curatorial masterstroke. For the first time, the works of these two titans of post-impressionist emotional expression were brought together on a massive scale. Visitors could see, side by side, Munch's The Scream and Van Gogh's The Starry Night, and feel the profound emotional and stylistic parallels between them. This exhibition revealed how both artists used color and form not to describe the external world, but to express their inner turmoil and psychological states. It was a narrative that neither museum could have fully told on its own. It required the pooling of their collections, their research, and their curatorial expertise. The result was a blockbuster show that offered a completely new understanding of both artists, demonstrating that collaboration can generate insights that isolation cannot. This synergy extends into the very heart of museum practice, scientific research, and conservation. As we mentioned, Van Gogh's materials are notoriously fragile. The race to understand and slow the degradation of his chrome yellow pigments is a perfect example of collaborative necessity. The Van Gogh Museum has spearheaded international research projects, partnering with institutions like the University of Antwerp and the Deutsches Elektron Synchrotron in Hamburg. They use powerful synchrotron X-ray beams, technology far beyond the scope of a typical museum lab, to analyze the chemical breakdown of pigments at a molecular level. This shared research, published and accessible to conservators worldwide, benefits every single institution that holds a Van Gogh. A discovery made about a painting in Amsterdam directly informs how a curator in New York or a conservator in Tokyo cares for their own piece. It's a global, open-source approach to preservation, with Amsterdam's collection often serving as the primary laboratory. The benefits are mutual. While the Van Gogh Museum lends its unparalleled collection for research, it also gains access to a global network of scientific minds and technologies. This collaborative model is far more efficient and effective than if every museum tried to conduct this high-level research independently. It's a clear case of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. The same principle applies to understanding his technique. By collaborating with institutions like the Kröller-Müller Museum, which holds the second-largest Van Gogh collection, researchers can compare works from the same period, analyze canvas weaves from the same supplier, and even digitally reconstruct his original color palettes, creating a far more complete picture of his artistic process. Of course, this level of synergy is not without its challenges. The logistics of moving priceless, irreplaceable artworks across continents are staggering. Insurance costs can run into the millions. Negotiations between institutions, each with its own mission, budget, and national regulations, can be incredibly complex. There are intense debates over which works are too fragile to travel, like the bedroom, which is rarely loaned. There's also the risk of what's known as blockbuster fatigue, where the focus on massive, ticket-selling exhibitions can sometimes overshadow smaller, more scholarly pursuits. But the overwhelming consensus in the museum world is that the benefits, the new discoveries, the richer storytelling, the expanded public access far outweigh these difficulties. The collaborative model has become the gold standard. It allows institutions to tell stories that transcend their own walls, to create a dialogue between artists, cultures, and eras. By placing a Van Gogh next to a Japanese woodblock print from the Musée Guimet in Paris, you viscerally demonstrate his influences. By showing his portraits alongside those of his contemporary, Gauguin from the Art Institute of Chicago, you illustrate their turbulent and creatively fruitful relationship. Synergy transforms a painting from a static object into a node in a vast, interconnected network of art history. Block 3. Van Gogh Future. Having established Amsterdam as the nucleus of Van Gogh's legacy and explored the powerful synergy of present-day museum collaborations, we must now look to the horizon. What is the future agenda for an artist who died over a century ago? The answer is not simply more of the same. The future of Van Gogh's legacy is being actively shaped by a revolutionary fusion of technology, new academic interpretations, and an even deeper, more integrated form of global collaboration. The goal is no longer just to preserve and display his work, but to make it more accessible, more understandable, and more deeply resonant for a new generation of digital natives. The most visible frontier is, without a doubt, the digital realm. Museums are no longer just physical spaces, they are becoming global media hubs, and the Van Gogh Museum is at the forefront of this transformation. We're moving far beyond simple online galleries. Think of high-resolution, multispectral scans of his paintings, allowing anyone with an internet connection to explore his brushwork in more detail than they could with the naked eye, even in the museum itself. These digital assets are invaluable for researchers who can analyze underdrawings and compositional changes without ever touching the canvas. But they are also powerful tools for public engagement. Imagine an interactive experience where you can overlay Vincent's own words from his letters onto the very landscapes he was describing as he painted them. This digital agenda is inherently collaborative. Creating these experiences requires partnerships with tech companies, universities, and digital humanities departments around the world. The Meet Vincent van Gogh experience, a traveling multimedia exhibition, is a prime example. It uses sophisticated projections, audio-visual storytelling, and life-sized recreations to immerse visitors in his world. It's a way to take the essence of the Amsterdam collection to cities that could never host the original, fragile artworks. Furthermore, the digitization of his complete correspondence, a monumental project undertaken with the Huygens Institute for Netherlands History, has created a free, globally accessible database. A scholar in Brazil can now cross-reference a letter held in Amsterdam with a drawing held in New York, unlocking connections that were previously hidden away in physical archives. This is the future of art historical research, borderless, digital, and collaborative. Alongside this technological revolution is a profound shift in how we interpret Van Gogh's story. For decades, the dominant narrative was that of the tortured genius, the isolated madman. The future agenda seeks to dismantle this romanticized and overly simplistic myth. Collaborative research is revealing a much more complex figure, a voracious reader, a fluent speaker of multiple languages, a deeply spiritual thinker, and a man who, despite his struggles, was intensely engaged with the artistic and intellectual currents of his time. Future exhibitions, informed by this networked research, will increasingly focus on these aspects. We will see shows that explore Van Gogh's relationship with literature, his astute observations of labor and social class, or his scientific interest in color theory. This provides a more nuanced, more human portrait of the artist, making his work even more compelling. This reinterpretation is crucial for engaging modern audiences who are wary of one-dimensional stereotypes. It shows that his art is not just an outpouring of raw, uncontrolled emotion, but the product of a sharp, inquisitive, and sophisticated mind. This, too, is a collaborative effort, requiring art historians to work with literary scholars, social historians, and even psychologists to build a more complete picture. Ultimately, the long-term vision for Van Gogh's legacy is one of a decentralized yet interconnected global network. The physical collection in Amsterdam will always be the anchor, the sacred core, but the spirit of his work, the stories it tells, and the knowledge it generates will be distributed and shared more freely than ever before. Future conservation efforts will rely on a global brain trust of scientists. Future exhibitions will be born from international partnerships that bring disparate works together to tell new stories. And future audiences will engage with his art through a hybrid of physical and digital experiences, tailored to be more personal and immersive. The solitary artist who once painted in isolation is now the central point of a global conversation, a legacy not just preserved, but actively being reinvented. The future of Van Gogh is not a static portrait, but a dynamic, collaborative masterpiece.